Hey, what's up? It's Jim, and today I'm going to talk about Eternals. Now, Eternals is one of the more interestingly made Marvel movies I've seen in a long time, and I don't think they're the kind of films that surprise you too much as a viewer. It feels like what I referred to before Star Wars kind of took over and science fiction was like explosion special effect thing. It was more of the science fiction of ideas cinematically. You look at 2001, obviously it had special effects, but it's more about the ideas within it. You look at like even Star Trek the motion picture is more in the 2001 vein than Star Wars, The Day the Earth Stood Still, The Twilight Zone, things of that name, Doctor Who. The first show of Doctor Who. And this feels like it's part of that. This feels like an old school 70s sci-fi film that like nobody saw and was super weird and had interesting ideas but never really caught on, that I probably really liked when I was 12. That's what Eternals feels like for the most part. It still has to fit into the cog of the machine that is Marvel Studios, and when it does that, it feels a little forced. It feels like it's ripped itself out of the auteurism of Chloe Zhao, who directed Nomadland, is directing this. She used natural locations and not just like in the Marvel movies. I think I should clear this part up because I think people are a little confused. They do actually use locations on a lot of Marvel movies. They just don't find locations that are like good looking. It's like parking lot and field. It's just like cool. So this, like, you can tell they actually shot on location, and Chloe Zhao is very good at shooting on location, and I think it gives it a different look in terms of the cinematography, which I also liked about this film. This is a different kind of movie for Marvel, and they're taking a source material that is not extremely popular. I seriously doubt she grew up loving this comic. I actually didn't check. Maybe she did. All like less than 20 issues of Jack Kirby's weird nonsense. But this film is about these gods, the Eternals, they're basically gods who are it's kind of hard to explain. Basically, these Celestials send the Eternals down to take care of the deviants which hurt and kill too much of humanity, and they're sent by the Celestials to kind of help the planet, help it grow, and help humanity grow, and they have been doing that since basically the beginning of civilization, and have been here this whole time, but now they see that the deviants are becoming more powerful and showing up in the modern age, and they have to take care of it. They've been here the whole time, and most wars and conflicts like that are things they don't really get involved with, and they don't really mean as much to them because they're like immortal, so it's like, a little war is something like, I don't know, I can just take a nap today, who cares, I'll be here tomorrow. It doesn't represent the same thing to them as it would to us. They explain that very well, but the team, which all have names like Ajax, Cersei, Kingo, Sprite, Phastos, Athena, who a lot of these people were later, or Gilgamesh, who would be, their names would later show up in myth in our world because Sprite would tell the stories of them. So like Athena would be changed to Athena, and then there's like a Pleiades the fetus character named after her. It's not a joke. Basically, they've been around forever and they've been helping humanity, and they need to figure out what's going on with the deviants and what happened to their leader Ajax, played by Salma Hayek, as she's been killed, and what the real things are going on as Cersei has been put in the Ajax role as the leader, and so forth. The odd nature of this film, it's interesting for me because I did grow up reading Marvel comics when I was a kid. It was like my elementary school days was spent reading a lot of comics, and I was actually into Avengers in the 90s, especially Operation Galactic Storm was a big one for me, or at least that era, and Black Knight. Actually, I have a lot of nostalgia for, but that plot line felt like Marvel was like, well, we have to put this in here, and you expect us to put this in here to hype up a Disney Plus show or whatever the fuck. Like, I don't know what he's going to show up in Avengers 5. Is that happening? I don't know. We don't know, but we might as well just start setting it up just in case. And we expect that as an audience. Like, I expect to see that in Eternals, to see them setting up stuff. And in this, it felt like Chloe Zhao didn't give a shit, but the Marvel overlords did. And this is like the most I've seen any director take over a movie and make it their own, like more than Coogler or Gunn or anything like that. It feels like all those guys, like, you can tell their auteurism's there, but they're meeting, there's more of a compromise with the studio. They're getting that auteurism to work within it. And this feels like Chloe Zhao is, but she's sort of just like, well, you let me do the location things and the weird stuff, so I'll just like do this dumb thing you're like super into or whatever. And like, it doesn't feel like she like really cares. Sometimes it feels like those scenes, she's more phoning it in, but there aren't a ton of them. It really does feel like an awkward fit in terms of that. But when this film works and is talking about like the idea of like, even with the conflict and the big thing they're trying to fight is totally unique to the Marvel universe, how they deal with it is like pretty typical for the Marvel universe, but like the idea of it is like different, and I actually really like that. This feels like a brainier sci-fi, like the sci-fi that like wasn't cool. You know, I think Wonder Woman 1984 is the much worse version of the same theory in a very broad sense. But this I really liked, and I like that they're doing different things with this and with the cosmic universe, because as much as I like the first Guardians at least, I think goes into the weirder, stranger aspects with like Jack Kirby. I think this is the first time he's getting a sole creator credit, but if you've looked at an Eternals comic, I would say there's no other person you could probably credit with creating this. He also did create all the stuff from Justice League, like the Darkseid and all that stuff is also Jack Kirby stuff. So if you're wondering, like, this feels like a DC movie or like Justice League kind of stuff with the gods and stuff, that's a reason it was like created by the same guy. And Jack Kirby, who didn't smoke weed, was really into these like bigger, broader ideas. And it's cool. It's weird we're getting this before Fantastic Four, but whatever. Like, if you like Star Trek, this is the kind of like actual Star Trek, not like J.J. Abrams Star Trek. This is a movie for you, and I actually really like that about it. It's like more of a smarter Marvel film. It does make all the silly Marvel stuff feel much more superfluous than I think any other film has made it. You know, in the other films, it feels like they get that to work character-wise, and it almost feels like they're sort of flaunting it. Like the opening action sequence, I felt like I understood who people were power-wise, but I didn't understand personality through their fighting, which is very unusual for Marvel. It very much felt like she let the previs do their thing, and like I get the impression she wasn't that interested. I wouldn't be surprised if she never does another one of these things, but I hope she does at the same point. I think she's a really fascinating director with this, and showing like how they can be disgusted with humanity, how they can like humanity, things like that. You know, this is the kind of sci-fi film that I would show to people and they would laugh at, and I would be obsessed with the ideas of. And like the whole idea of like Phastos, who Brian Tree Henry plays, there's a whole scene with Hiroshima, and I thought it was kind of touching, because the idea of like someone who had seen the evolution of man and technology, and how that would be a really defining horrible point. You know, I think people are like, that's so obvious, but if you're, you know, immortal and you see those things, the weight of them will probably carry on you more. And I think this film also considers their perspective, which is also why this film almost feels like disconnected from the Marvel universe at the same time, not just like stylistically and artistically and things like that. They mention them, which apparently in the original comic, it wasn't originally part of the Marvel universe. Like they would reference them as like fictional characters. So I think that dinner table thing was to reference it, or to just be in the ads. I'd probably give you too much credit there. But I like the idea of like taking a film and like showing it from this immortal perspective, and you almost do feel like you're on their plane, and everyone else other than like Kit Harington almost feels like not as important, which I quite liked about it. I like Gemma Chan a lot. I'm a Cersei, again, like since I grew up with Avengers, I do remember that character, and I think it's cool to have someone like that. I think she's one of the few people who gets to play two characters in the Marvel universe. There's a few people, but it's interesting. But I thought she was actually really good in that role. I'm excited to see her in other stuff. If they're going to use that character more like they used to use her in the 90s. She's like, I am interested to see Marvel tackle these things and doing these weirder things, since they want to have like a movie every 6 months or 2 months or however often we're doing it. They're going into these things and like why they have these characters, because unlike everything else, there's not like a huge merchandise push for the Eternals. Like I honestly probably didn't really know about them before this was announced. I would suggest actually checking out Comic Trope's video of comparing the comic to the movie. So if you want things explained to you and you don't have Marvel Unlimited or don't want to read that, you can. It's a nice refresher, and he's a great YouTube channel. Some of the cast, I do feel like they play off each other well. Angelina Jolie, I do think is a little, that casting is strange, because you know, she's one of the biggest movie stars of our current era. She was just in a big movie, Maleficent 2, which I didn't see, but you know, she's in big movies in like the lead role. It's like a big deal when she shows up in anything, because she doesn't actually do a lot of stuff anymore. Although I liked her in that action movie she was just in. It's strange that she has such a small part, and I'm like, did she do this because she wants to be in a bunch of Marvel movies? Like, it's a way to keep busy and keep your name out there and bankable and stuff like that. But it's just like, it's super strange. She's not someone who's a character supporting actress. She's a movie star through and through. And there's just like no escaping that. And it's not because I'm like, oh, she's Angelina Jolie. Like, I felt like Selma Hayek's like an actress. And Angelina Jolie is an actress, but it's just like use that movie stardom to your advantage in your role. Like, look at Jennifer Lopez in Hustlers. It's like one of the best uses I've seen of a movie star in recent memory, of using that movie star charisma and the way the camera's always like looking at you and everyone's looking at you in that way. And it felt like they were trying to act like she didn't have that, and it's like, I notice every time she's on screen, and not as like a creepy dude. I don't actually have a crush on her or something like that. It's just like I was like, what are they doing with that? I did like Brian Tyree Henry. Kumail Nanjiani I thought worked pretty naturally within this, and you have the quippy Marvel stuff. It felt like he's basically Kumail Nanjiani in this. Why he got ripped for this, I have no fucking clue. That makes no sense to me. Like, everyone else in this movie did not have to be in perfect shape except for Kumail Nanjiani. Did he just want to do that? I don't know. We've been hearing about it for like 2 fucking years or something because of COVID and all that, but I'm still like, I'm super confused because it's also like, if everyone else, when you're like Star-Lord or something, doing like backflips and all this stuff, and he's just going like I could do that now, and you could pay me like half, unless he got paid real bad, then don't do that. I'd probably be okay with it. I think Kit Harington will be a very good Black Knight when that happens. Barry Keoghan was also very interesting. I thought it used its cast in like a diverse cast that all different body types, different shapes, different colors, was like, I quite liked how they all played off of each other quite naturally. And I think the team of them together felt like a team like, the Dirty Dozen or something like that, where you have various different personalities. I quite like this film. I like where the Marvel Universe is at least like expanding in a way that like, this didn't feel like I didn't feel like I'm like, oh, it's the structure of Iron Man, but it's this guy. Or like, oh, I'm used to the flow of this. Like, I wasn't used to I mean, it did feel like a bigger, broader, weirder science fiction film that like got into the ideas of Jack Kirby. I don't think as interesting as the cinematography is with Chloe Zhao and how she uses it, and this very much feels like someone who, like, for example, everyone's talking about how great the cinematography is in this. She's cinematography Ben Davis, who's done things like Age of Ultron. He did Doctor Strange. He's done a bunch of stuff. And if you look at this does not look like anything I've ever seen him shoot before. And I think I've said before, like, it's not just how great the DP is, it's how well the director knows how to use him. And you can tell that in this, because I was surprised to see that this guy's filmography. Like she definitely brought out the best in him in this film, which is actually really cool. I'm excited to see more stuff from him. I'm going to notice him from now on, and judge him on this movie. But as interesting as that cinematography with Ben Davis it feels like things based on Jack Kirby's writing, but I didn't get that as much with the illustration, which that I'm a little like, feel like there should have been more of a meet in the middle. Maybe that's just a silly criticism, but what happened in Ragnarok, where you could tell it was a Jack Kirby world, I couldn't tell it as much, and I wish that had been more shown, but I still actually really like how well this is shot. But if we're going to have one of these every 6 months, and we're going to have, say there's like 7,000 Marvel characters and all that stuff, and each one of them should have a Disney Plus show and a movie and all that nonsense. If that is the case, then we should have different stuff like this, and we should keep expanding the world, and we should be doing different kinds of movies and not doing the same sort of structure. And to me, that's what I liked about Marvel Comics growing up, because if I picked up Excalibur and then I picked up Uncanny X-Men, those are radically different books. And this is one of the very few times I feel like when I'm watching Eternals, it doesn't feel like Loki or WandaVision or, Iron Man or Captain America or whatever. And I think that is probably, in a sense, as unique and as different as this is, I think this is probably more of a Marvel movie than one that just copies the structure and sticks to the genre of what this is, because it shows what's so great about this universe is that it can be different. I hope in 20 years they don't look at this as like, and that's when things went down, they made a movie about the fucking Eternals. I hope this is looked back on as like an interesting, strange, like almost like Halloween 3 kind of experiment that actually, for the most part, was able to work out itself and fight the Marvel structure while also kind of falling into it when it at least had to. It's things in such moments between those Marvel, cutting to a different thing or acknowledging universe stuff that you have a lot more hope than you really expect from this kind of like big blockbuster stuff. A hope of kind of auteurism and ideas and things that kind of makes you, or at least made me leaving a little more surprised and going like, huh, which I didn't really expect from something like this. And I think that shows Chloe Zhao working in blockbusters is probably going to end up being a lot more interesting than just a director picking up a paycheck. She's the kind of auteur director who's going to, if she's going to be the studio director, you're going to notice, and it's not going to be the same. So if you've seen Eternals and you would like to talk about it, then comment below in the comments and subscribe if you would like to.